Hello, and welcome to the Town Hall. I'm Michelle Marks, CU Denver Chancellor, and I'd like to briefly introduce our panel for this afternoon. We have with us today Rod Nairn, our Provost, Jennifer Sobenay, our Chief Financial Officer, Chris Puckett, our Legal Counsel, who with others has been leading our COVID-19 response, Elena Jones, our Interim Vice Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor of Student Success, and Paul Teskey, Dean of the School of Public Affairs, who'll be serving as our moderator today. So excited to welcome you back to campus, or if you're like me, welcome to you for the first time. We start the semester next week knowing that it will look different than any semester that we've ever experienced. And we're all coping with life during a pandemic and the associated economic crisis, as well as social unrest. Over the last month, I've had the opportunity to speak with many CU Denver students and faculty and staff who've told me they feel more anxiety and frustration and loneliness and sadness and even fear. And I get it. Life is a lot harder right now than it was 6 months ago. And with many K-12 schools going primarily remote and more limited early childhood options, our student and faculty and staff who are parents are struggling to figure out how to work or stay in school and take care of their children. And yet, despite these hardships since arriving last month, I have seen so many examples of the resilience and dedication of this community, the commitment to our students and our mission. So many of you have spent your summer pulling together plans for a safe return. This has been full-time, additional, unpaid work since March for the Safe Return team and chairs. Nearly 250 faculty members have taken courses this summer in designing and teaching virtual courses, in promoting active online learning and remote and hybrid delivery to ensure a strong educational experience no matter the format. Staff have been working to ensure that high quality services will be available to students both virtually and where appropriate in person. I know that advisors and faculty members have been fielding questions and providing guidance to students to help them identify the best modalities to fit their needs. And to our entire CU Denver community, I want to express my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude for your dedication. I am so proud to belong to a community as devoted to student success as this one is. As to our plan for a safe return, our principles have guided our planning, which have been safety and protecting our campus community and promoting our student success. Our students told us they needed more flexibility in the way they take their courses in order to stay in school. So we're offering a variety of course formats to meet student needs and preferences using online, virtual, hybrid, and campus modalities. 24% of our classes this fall will have some online campus component, either fully or as part of a hybrid, and the remaining 76% of the classes will be virtual. And this approach is going to significantly de-densify our campus. We don't expect more than 500 students on campus at any given time. We've gradually and safely brought back research and creative activities in phases over the summer, and we're incorporating the lessons that we have learned into our plans for fall. Our Links Crossing Residence Hall students have been arriving this week, and we have reduced occupancy to 1 student per room. As for our testing, we're administering testing for all students and staff in Links Crossing upon move-in, and then every 2 to 3 weeks thereafter at no cost. Over 300 students have already taken tests so far since Monday, and we have free tests at the Auraria Health Center for anybody who has symptoms or has been exposed to a COVID-19 case. I'm also very pleased to announce that we've entered into a partnership with Gary Community Investments COVID Check Colorado to provide tests for asymptomatic faculty, staff, and students for a reduced price of $10 self-pay. We expect to have our details finalized by September 1st. We have a strictly followed safety culture that includes face coverings required at all times, social distancing, and enhanced cleaning protocols. We're distributing one-time and reusable masks and oral thermometers throughout units on campus to provide to students and staff and faculty. There are still many unknowns about COVID-19 at this time, but studies are showing that wearing masks and social distancing does work. Masks and social distancing need to be practiced by everyone, and we need to hold each other accountable. When we have positive cases, we have a plan for that. People who have symptoms or test positive must stay home and complete a reporting form that's accessible on our website. The reporting form notifies the case management team, which quickly assesses the situation and if needed, notifies the contact tracing team. Our contact tracing team works with public health officials to evaluate information on confirmed cases and notify those who may have been exposed. Faculty will be informed if a student in their class has tested positive or is symptomatic, though not by name, and will hear directly from the case management team on the recommended course of action. Fellow students will also be informed and notified if the class must go remote for a period of time. If somebody has had close contact with a confirmed case, they will be required to go remote and self-quarantine for 14 days. Those testing positive will be required to isolate and not return to campus until they are cleared by the Auraria Health Center. If we have a number of outbreaks in a course, a location, or a work unit, the case management team will determine next steps and whether the entire unit will need to pivot to remote. And students who live at Links Crossing and test positive will be required to self-isolate. And we've reserved a section of this dorm for this. If it does become necessary to phase down campus operations, we're prepared to do so. We've developed 6 metrics to guide our decision. For our external community-based metrics that are derived from Denver Public Health's caution metrics for the city of Denver. They are 7-day averages of confirmed COVID tests, laboratory test positivity rate, the number of hospital beds that are filled, and the percentage of ICU beds that are occupied. And we've added 2 additional campus-based metrics, which are outbreaks on campus. Are we seeing single cases or larger outbreaks that indicate our social distancing and mask wearing are not working? And on-campus test positivity rates. How many people in our community are sick, and can and should we continue to do business? We're developing a page on the website to provide these metrics to you, and we'll send you regular email updates as well. There have also been questions about CU Denver's financial strength during this challenging time, and here's what we know. The state of Colorado cut funding for higher education by 58% this year. This is very concerning, as we are uncertain about the permanency of these cuts. Separately, the governor provided some one-time federal funds to the university to continue educational opportunities for students. Our enrollment this year is a mixed picture. The good news is that it seems like we'll have about as many students as we had last year, but the mix looks different. Many of our beloved international students are not able to get back with us. And we will have more graduate students with us this year, and fewer first-time, full-time freshmen and non-resident students. And there are financial implications with this change. Those of us making more than $60,000 a year are taking furloughs and sharing the sacrifice. And I'm glad that we're doing so in a graduated way, with a progressive policy where the highest earners take the highest cuts and no cuts to the lowest paid. This aligns with the value that we place on equity. And on the good news front, we are welcoming 51 new faculty members, a new business school dean, Dean Scott Dawson, who joined us this summer, most recently from Cal Poly, and a number of new associate deans, and 1 new chancellor. Also, our City Heights Residence Hall and Learning Commons project is on time and on budget and open and on track to open this time next year. And the new $500,000 seed grant from the CU President's Office for Interdisciplinary Research on Urban Issues is an exciting opportunity to collaborate and address very important issues that are affecting our city. It is true that this is an extraordinarily challenging time for us in higher education in general, but it also presents opportunities for needed change and innovation. And I am pleased to see that so many of our faculty have engaged in scholarship, specifically to help advance our understanding and response to the pandemic. We must use this moment, though challenging, as one where we can make innovation happen. And we are already doing this. The pandemic required us as a campus to think differently about using digital resources and formats and our own creativity to provide students with flexibility and choices to meet their situation. Designing instruction to meet student needs is something we can build upon in the future. And as far as student services go, our staff have figured out ways to provide student support services for all of our students, no matter how they choose to access them. And we're going to learn how to carry this forward after the pandemic. And I'm so proud of how our colleges and schools have adapted and educated us during this pandemic. Here are a few examples. Engineering is working with InWorks to produce PPE to make in Make for COVID. The College of Arts and Media has been providing virtual music performances. The College of Architecture and Planning has offered a new class this summer on the pandemic recovery planning. The School of Education and Human Development has been creating free online resources for teaching young children at home through play. The College of Liberal Arts and Sciences offered a class this summer, COVID-19, Colorado and Beyond, which I've been hearing about. It got rave reviews from the 500 people who signed up for it. A School of Public Affairs Economic Development class helped 5 Colorado communities with their reopening plans after the initial COVID shutdown. I'm so eager to take lessons learned from these innovations demonstrated by our faculty and staff and apply them to our future. So my next steps for the fall, I've started my 100 Days of Listening tour. My first priority has been to learn and listen as much as I can about our needs. I focused my first 10 days on equity and racial justice. I heard from students and faculty and staff about our need to do more. And I announced action steps on diversity, equity, and inclusion on July 20th. And the listening tour is now broadened to other issues and runs through October 8th. We're working with your deans and unit leaders to convene sessions, so stay tuned. Themes that emerge will inform a strategic planning process on campus, and that will ultimately position us for further success. So even during a pandemic, I am really happy to be here with you, part of a strong links community that is creating knowledge to improve our society, pushing our equity agenda forward, and lifting up, lifting up the lives of our students. Now I'd like to ask the leadership team to join me in answering your questions and turn it over to Paul.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Marks. And we're excited as faculty and staff at CU Denver to have you here with your energy, your ideas, your leadership. So thank you. We got some questions from you all in the audience in advance, and we're taking more questions. There's a Q&A function. I see we've already got a couple coming in. So if you would like to pose a question, we'll get to as many of those coming in this hour as we can. But we're gonna start with some of the ones we've already gotten. If we don't get to a question that you ask next week on CU Denver News, we're gonna post the questions and the answers because we obviously wanna make sure that everything that everybody wants to know gets answered in a timely way. So the first question is actually for Chancellor Marks, and it is, what do you see as the biggest challenge related to this coming school year, 2021? And what do you see as CU Denver's biggest attribute as an educational institution in terms of our students and our community?
Well, we're facing a trifecta of crises right now, a public health crisis, an economic crisis, and an ongoing crisis of social inequity. And the interaction of these crises magnifies their effect, and everyone feels it. It's hit some harder than others. And I worry about the mental and physical toll on our community. Our parents, including students, faculty, and staff, are bearing a big burden of having to choose between work or parenting. It's hard to do both at the same time. And I see my biggest challenge at CU Denver is how to take care of this amazing community when the going is tough. And when we don't have our normal social systems in place, and when we have serious financial strain and psychological strain, and how I can bring empathy and compassion and flexibility to a community in need. I'll tell you what gives me hope though, our approach to safe return, Paul, that you've been a big leader in helping us enact, it embodies our values, and I'm proud of that. It gives me confidence. And I'm paying a lot of attention to creative ways that we can manage the strain and still meet our mission and support our students. As to the biggest attribute, I could say the progress we've made as a public urban research university in one of the coolest cities in America. And that's what I thought when I first arrived. And that answer wouldn't be wrong. But I would say after 43 days on the job, I now have a different answer, which is you. Which is our first generation students who've worked hard to get to college, who I got to meet the other night. It's our faculty who've worked through the summer to get their courses ready to be delivered flexibly for our students. It's our staff who've reimagined their jobs to support students and technology and figure out stronger ways to navigate students through websites and everything else. Our community who is fighting for equity and holding us accountable to do much better. It's our administrators who are working 24/7 to get us to safely reopen. I mean, this community is such an incredible positive force, and I am humbled and honored to be a part of it.
Great. Thank you so much, Chancellor. Our next question is for Chris Puckett, the Chancellor earlier mentioned testing, and testing is a big question in our society right now. Will students have access to free and frequent COVID testing on campus, Chris?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is a little bit more complicated, and here's how this works. We do have, and absolutely have had since March, free testing for students, staff, and faculty who are symptomatic or who have had a contact with a confirmed COVID-19 case, and that happens at the Auraria Health Center, and that continues. What we've most recently been able to implement is asymptomatic testing, or when somebody is not ill or has not been exposed. And we've started doing that at the Links Crossing during this last week. And we are going to continue that every 2 to 3 weeks into the future. We are continuing to work on this asymptomatic testing, and the hope is that we will very soon, within the next week or so, be able to announce that anyone on campus, and we'll be focusing on those who are coming to campus first, will be able to do a self-pay option to be tested. And one of the best things about this testing is that it gets turned around very quickly. We've seen less than 48-hour turnarounds, so we're very excited about that. I will just go ahead and tick off one of the answers here, give one of them. Do we need to get a COVID test before coming to campus? The answer is no. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Our next question is for Vice Chancellor Jones, Elena Jones, and it's from a new student, Jeremy Montana, who asks, on the first day of class, where do you go to log in for an online class? Very good question.
Thank you, Dean Teskey. So students will log in through Canvas. So you can navigate to Canvas from a link located on the Links Central website or through a quick link on your UCD Access student portal. I really do encourage you to review the Canvas shell for all of your classes before Monday. That'll help you be prepared.
Great, thank you. Our next question is also for our Chancellor about international students, and what impact do you think the current international situation will have on future learning and development of international students at CU Denver?
Well, I worry about the impact of the coronavirus on international students. International students add so much vibrancy to our campus culture, and there's no question that these international travel restrictions and consular restrictions on issuing visas and an overall concern for the pandemic has disrupted many international students' plans to study at CU Denver this fall. Many are choosing to continue their education, whether in person or virtually, while other international students are choosing to defer to a later semester. I do know that our Office of International Affairs is well positioned to work with each international student to help them make the best choice possible for themselves this fall. We've made many inroads with international students and partnerships at this campus, and we are going to do everything possible to resume and even expand our international focus once this pandemic and travel restrictions ease.
Thank you, Chancellor. The next question is timely because we know the economy is in a challenging place. This is a question for our Chief Financial Officer, Jennifer Sobonet. It's about tuition. Will tuition rates be reduced or compensated in any way for the switch in the format from classes to online? If not, how is it justified to offer online experience at in-person tuition rates?
Thank you, Dean Teskey. So to simply answer that, tuition rates will remain unchanged. And actually, because of our commitment to keeping our costs as low as possible, this is the same tuition rate that we have charged now for 3 years in a row. So let me explain this though, because tuition is not charged based on the mode of instruction. Instead, tuition is based, and it has been, on your residency. So whether you are a resident or a non-resident or an international student. And so it doesn't matter the course modality, whether it's hybrid, online, remote, on campus, the rate is the same and depends on your residency. And this is because of the way that our accreditation works. is that all of our courses, regardless of modality, involve regular and substantive instructor interaction with our students. In particular, all of our faculty and instructors provide regular instruction and interact regularly with their students. They provide full and substantive assessments, which as a fellow student, I don't really like all the assessment part, but that happens, and regular feedback on students' coursework. And also our faculty and instructors are proactive and available in providing information or responding to students' questions about the content of the course. Over this summer, our faculty and staff have added resources to all of our instructional modalities by improving our IT capabilities, adding learning assistants and virtual student assistants to our classes, and incorporating effective evidence-based practices for remote, hybrid, and online learning. So we're ready to go.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. And I know the financial questions are complicated. And there's a related one related to your explanation about tuition. A different student asked about fees and student fees and what is happening with them this year.
Sure, let me walk through the changes that we've made on our fees. There are three main areas of fees that we have. The first one I'd like to talk about is the RTD fee. And this was a decision that was made in conjunction with the Community College of Denver, MSU Denver, AHEC, and all of our Student Government Association leaders. And the decision has been made to suspend the RTD contract that we have for fall 2020 semester. This means that students will not be paying the RTD fee. This also means that our students will not have a valid college pass through RTD. If any of our students have a need for additional financial assistance around transportation because of this decision, please reach out to Loving Links and they can help you with financial assistance on transportation. But this was certainly a decision that was made because so few students are coming to the campus, as well as the reduction in, because of social distancing, the reduction in all sorts of uses of public transportation. The second set of fees I'd like to talk about are the Auraria fees, as well as our Lola and Rob Salazar Student Wellness Center fee. Those have been reduced by 50%, and that's to acknowledge that not all of those services can be accessed. Of course, our wellness center can be accessed, and we want you to use that, because back to what Chancellor Marks was talking about, our physical and mental health are so important to all of us, and getting to the gym and getting to exercise is an important part of that. But we have reduced those fees by 50%, partially because the students voted on the debt obligations that were created for all of the buildings that are paid for with those fees. So what we try to do is find a balance between accessing the services and the buildings, as well as having to pay the debt that is created on those buildings, which is why we came to the 50% mark. Then finally, we are continuing to charge specific fees at 100%, and that is because all of the services are provided for all of our students, whether they are remote or on campus. And that is our student services fee, our information technology fee, and the international student fee where applicable, as well as our school and college major and instructional fees. And one of the things that's important to understand for the fall is that we eliminated the online and the hybrid fees, and we applied the information technology fee to all students, as well as the student services fee to all students. And this allows us to expand those services and create equity of access for all students, regardless of modality, to both the remote and on-campus services that are provided from those fees. So I think that should take care of all three of the areas, Dean Teskey, where we have fees, and hopefully that answers those questions.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I think that's a very direct answer to a complicated issue. And I should have noted too, our other panelists, if you'd like to, add something or jump into the answers, please do so. Our next question is for our provost, Rod Nairn. And the question is, I know that students have an option to opt out of a hybrid in-person class. How about the faculty? Can a faculty who has been assigned to a hybrid class choose to deliver the course fully remotely?
So with the approval of their academic unit, they most probably can. This is not a question or an issue that has arisen on the Denver campus at this point, as far as we know. I think everybody on the Zoom call knows, at least I hope they do, that with a lot of work and a lot of input from the faculty, 4 different class formats were established for safe return to campus. Faculty were consulted about their preference for these teaching formats, and we went through a lengthy process working with faculty and shared governance to address any concerns about the modalities. Student needs and preferences were also factored in, and with those 4 teaching formats now set, there are of course expectations on the part of many about just what will be presented this fall. As the Chancellor mentioned earlier, only 24% or thereabouts of our classes will have some on-campus component. And as I said before, frankly, we're not hearing any issues or problems like those that are perhaps suggested by this question. So if there is a faculty member or faculty members who've discovered that they can no longer present their class with an on-campus component, they need to talk with their chair or dean's office as soon as possible. If the reason is a documented medical issue for themselves or someone they live with, there is an established HR process that they should follow, and of course they will be fully accommodated. But regardless of what the reason might be for this question, any faculty should talk as soon as possible with their chair, dean's office if they have this question. As far as campus leadership is concerned, we're encouraging everyone to be as accommodating of faculty and staff work preferences as possible. We would expect that HR can provide support and assistance if there is an issue that cannot get resolved at the academic unit level, be that department, school, or college. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. And the provost mentioned the 4 kinds of courses, which we worked very hard on over this summer. At the one extreme, we have the what we might call regular online classes, which are often they are asynchronous. That is, the work can be done at different times, and the class doesn't meet, say, at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. On the other extreme, we have on-campus classes that will be meeting on campus, sometimes perhaps with the whole class or most of the class being there. And then kind of the in-between categories. One is the hybrid category, where there be some on-campus meetings, but there'll also be Zoom connections and other asynchronous work happening. And then the remote classes, which are meant to be no one on campus, but there is a synchronous time, say again, 2 o'clock on Tuesday, where the whole class is meeting typically on Zoom, and that'll be at least some of the instruction, probably not all of the instruction that takes place in those remote classes. So in a number of places on our website and elsewhere, we've got the 4 modalities. The class that you've signed up for is one of those, and as you start, I think it'll become much clearer, what the meeting patterns are, and you can work with your instructor to work that out. And another question we have for the provost is in terms of office hours. Will students be able to meet with faculty during office hours?
It depends very much on the professor, probably, and their office. Where the physical distancing, the maintaining 6 feet at least distance apart, and wearing masks is important. So to some extent, it will depend on the office and its physical characteristics. I expect that most office hours, in fact, for a variety of reasons, will be virtual. So please, if you're a student following this, check the syllabus and be sure to ask your faculty about exactly what their office hours are and what the modality is going to be.
Great. Thanks, Rod. And I just note too, we've had a lot of good feedback about advising done by Zoom, and I think professor office hours done by Zoom will be surprisingly good when it can't be done always in person. The next question is for Elena Jones. For hybrid classes, what days are going to be on campus and what days will be online?
Great question. Thank you. So once again, I'm going to refer all the students and really encourage you to check your Canvas shell for each of your classes to check the meeting pattern. And I really encourage you to do that before Monday. Information on each of your classes will be provided there. And as stated previously, you can access Canvas through Link Central or through your UCD Access student portal. This information will also be in the course syllabus. And another resource, if I was going to leave you with 2 key resources that I really want to refer students to, it's Link Central. Absolutely, that's a #1 place for you to ask your questions. And the second is to the Safe Return website. We have a tab for student resources, and we have all sorts of great information on there because additional information, as Dean Teskey was talking about the 4 course formats. And it also has a checklist. It has frequently asked questions. And it also, I saw a question in the Q&A about student services. And there's a lot of great information and links to student services where students can find out more information about how they can access each of the student services that they're interested in.
Great. Thank you, Elena. Our next question is about transportation and how will campus leadership help with the expenses of parking for employees who go into the office? Jennifer, can you take that one?
Sure, I'll tackle that. Parking's always a fun one in downtown Denver. So for employees, for faculty and staff who are coming back, we've done a lot of work to figure out ways to provide parking, especially for those of you who might have been taking public transportation in the past and you'd rather drive into campus. First of all, I want to let those of you who know, who already have parking passes, we are not putting on the inflationary increased costs that usually happen on July 1st for your parking pass. So know that that has not been added to the cost of your parking pass. Secondly, what we've done on the city side of Spear is in the CU Denver building as well in the business school building. We're going to make that a first come, first serve parking area for people with parking passes. And we've lowered the cost of the parking passes and we've created kind of 2 buckets. So for those faculty and staff who are only going to come to campus for maybe a day or 2 per week, you'll want to look at the option for a part-time, a partial parking pass. And that the cost of that is $85 per month. And then for those of you who are coming 5 days a week and going to be spending all day on campus, those parking passes are $133 a month. And we've checked, we've actually done our research around the lower downtown area, and those are the lowest costs that you can get for garage underground parking. What I do want to really emphasize too is the Auraria campus. There won't be as many people as normally coming to campus. And so we won't have the congestion that we normally have in the parking areas. And so I also want to flag for everybody that there will be options for parking on the Auraria campus, and it's much less expensive to park on the Auraria campus. If you're just coming for a couple of hours, I would say definitely park on the Auraria campus. A full day in the Tivoli garage is only $7. If you want to park closer to Links Crossing, parking on the surface lots closer to Links Crossing are only $4 per day. So I think it really depends. We've got a lot of options for you as you come back, depending on if you're coming back to teach a class for 2 hours or you're coming back for 5 days a week. And so please, definitely, you have lots of options. Use those options and what's best for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. We're giving you a lot of the tough questions about finances, parking, and now health insurance. A student asked, given the current state of the pandemic, have you considered offering a domestic student health insurance plan? CU Boulder and CU Anschutz offer some plans, so why does Denver not have this option?
So the answer is yes, absolutely. We are looking at health insurance for our students. We actually, in 2016 and prior, had optional student health insurance. We always have international health insurance for our international students, but for our resident and domestic non-resident students, we actually decided to not offer health insurance back in 2016 because it had become so prohibitively expensive for our students, and it was less expensive to get the health insurance on the exchange, the Colorado exchange. But with this change, obviously with COVID-19 and also with us moving to more of a residential campus, as you know, our City Heights Residence Hall will be opening this time next year. We're moving more into that residential system, and so we do want to find ways to provide access to health insurance for our students. Whether that will be mandatory or voluntary, we'll be working through those issues this year and figuring that out. Obviously, the costs are very different, and when health insurance is mandatory, it then becomes part of the cost of attendance for all of our students. So we need to work through those various issues. Chris Puckett is helping me with all of that from a legal perspective. So Chris, I don't know if you want to chime in anything on this, but we're definitely looking into a solution for this for our students for next year.
There have been challenges for many years since the Affordable Care Act came into play. It made it prohibitively expensive, but we continue to discuss it with the system as well as the other campuses, because there are some interesting ideas about how we might be able to create better products, better insurance products. And so please know that this has been a topic for many of us for a while, and it's continues to be, and this year will continue to be a priority for many of us.
Thank you, Jennifer and Chris. We got several questions, and this next one will be for the Chancellor, but several questions about diversity. And as Chancellor Marks mentioned, she spent her first 10 days of our listening tour focusing on equity and diversity. So the questions are, given that the campus prides itself on our diverse student population, what actions will you take to have that diversity seen more in our faculty and staff, mirroring that diversity of our students? And how will CU Denver continue to support underrepresented students in a social climate that's been very challenging and sometimes attempts to negate their identity?
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to those who are raising these questions. This is very personal to me and absolutely critical for CU Denver. You know, this is the issue that's facing us as a society and a country right now, and we need to be upfront about our past. The history of racism and injustice in this country is appalling, and its shameful legacy continues. And I recognize that CU Denver is not exempt from this history. It pains me to know that we started as a campus that displaced minoritized communities, and we sit on land that belonged to Native people. I'm proud that this campus has taken a stance to make things right, and how much work you all have already accomplished, and I'm still learning about. We have a lot to do, and I recognize that it's my personal responsibility to see this work through. And I accept that accountability as your chancellor. And I also know that I can't do it alone. And that's why I spent my first 10 days as chancellor listening to you on these issues specifically. Yes, we are incredibly proud of our diversity of our student population, and we know that that's only the first step. It's true that our faculty and staff do not reflect that same diversity. As a response to your feedback during my listening sessions, here's what we're gonna do. We're relaunching the national search for our Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I've made the decision to have this position report solely to the Denver campus and elevated it to report directly to me. And that search will launch in the next few weeks with a transparent search process. I want to hear from and learn from faculty in this work. I'm in the process of hiring a part-time faculty fellow to advise me and my leadership team on DEI issues. And I believe a request for nominations was sent to faculty earlier this month. We care about maintaining a welcoming campus where our campus police are our partners. We're working now to start an advisory board for the AHEC Tri-Institutional Police Force. I've asked Omar Montgomery, head of Black Student Services, to serve on the launch committee with consultation from former police officer and SPA faculty member Paul Taylor. And I'm grateful to both of them for their support and interest. We're also in the process of creating an equity task force, and our deans and administrators are committed to working with me to put that into practice and to do more to recruit and hire and promote staff and faculty of color. I'm dedicating time and resources for CU Denver to take a serious look at our teaching and our learning environment and our culture and how we can ensure that it's safe and welcoming. We care about creating and about modeling a listening and learning culture. Earlier this week, my cabinet and all of the deans participated in a training to go deeper on learning equity and racial justice issues. We know we must be really in this conversation, and we know this work demands a very intentional and continued focus. So I accept that challenge, and I ask you to join me by learning and modeling and fixing our systems and culture to make that better.
Thank you. Next question for Alana Jones. How often will you hold town halls or other virtual meetings to keep students informed about what's going on at CU Denver this fall?
Thank you. So in addition to this town hall, we've had 2 others so far just for students and families, and most recently one last Tuesday. For the fall, we haven't set a regular schedule for these student information sessions, but we will certainly hold them if there appear to be many questions that students are asking. But once again, I'm going to really refer you back to one of these key resources I was talking to you about, and that's Link Central, because Link Central is available to you at any time to answer questions that you might have. We've recently revamped Link Central to be more robust, a one-stop destination for students to either get their questions answered or get pointed in the right direction.
Great. Thank you. And I'll just add, I see we're getting a number of questions live coming in, and we're going to address as many of those as we can, as well as a couple more that came in earlier. But Elena, since we're on this topic, a couple have come in questions about services on campus. Which ones will be open and how they're available from the bursar, financial aid, registrar, IDs. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, so Link Central will be a one-stop location for students to get questions answered relative to financial aid, registrar, bursar, other questions. And then there are a number of student services that are planning to have some presence on campus. All of them will have a virtual presence and will be able to support students as needed. And there's a list that's really pretty comprehensive on the student resources page of the Safe Return to Campus Fall 2020 under the Promoting Your Academic Success. There's all sorts of services listed with links that will provide more information about how students can access them and the hours.
Great. Thank you, Alana. A very interesting question has come in about strategic planning, and the student or faculty or staff member asks that CU Denver looks like it's due for a new strategic plan. So Chancellor Marks, what can you tell us about that situation?
We are. There was a joint Anschutz CU Denver strategic plan that ended in 2020, and we are absolutely due for a new strategic plan. I'm in my listening tour right now through October, and then we'll be using the themes that emerge to think through how, as a campus, we move into a strategic planning process starting in January. And there will be ample opportunities for students and faculty and staff to be involved. We hope that this is a very campus-wide engaged process, and I'm looking forward to it.
Great, thank you. A fairly specific question, but one that I think is probably helpful to a lot of students. The student asks, what do I do if I have a remote class and then I have an on-campus class with only 15 minutes or so in between? Elena, can you answer that one?
Yes, I'll be happy to. That's a great question. So students will be able to find places on campus to study or participate in a remote class. So we have a number of spaces on campus. We have about 420 different workspaces. 69 of those are centralized computer stations with drop-in and reservable options through the EMS scheduling system. 56 of those are centralized landing zones without computers, so where you can bring your own computer. And 233 of them are school and college computer areas. So to access these, please request an EMS account as soon as possible if you don't have one. Please note that it may take 2 days to get approval for your account. You can find out more by, once again, I'm going to refer you to that resource. That's one of those 2 resources I keep referring you to, and that's the student resources page on the Safe Return website. There is a link to request an account. You can also settle into some of the public spaces with safe distancing in place, of course, and that includes the atrium of the North Classroom building and the Auraria Library Cafe space. The Office of Information Technology Student Labs and Printing webpage will also be updated soon for hours and locations of all the student spaces.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. Chris, a question came up following up your discussion on testing. How quickly are the tests likely to be turned around?
Great question, and very important these days. The Auraria Health Center actually just brought on a rapid testing machine just this week, and they actually we're starting to test it on Monday. So we're going to have very quick testing available through the Auraria Health Center. I think it's about 45 minutes. I think it's the Abbott machine. If it's not that one, it's one of the others that does a quick test. As far as the asymptomatic testing that I was discussing earlier, those are being turned around. They're PCR tests, and those are being turned around right now at 48 to 72 hours.
Great, appreciate that. So another student asked a specific question that I think can illuminate some larger issues. It says, I have a class that starts at 6:30 p.m. and I can't get to campus earlier to check in and get my wristband. When I get to campus, what can I do about check-in at a later hour? Chris, can you take that one?
Yeah, that's great. So we do have a site available to check in all the way up to 7 p.m. So we're asking folks to try and check in at that location. If you come in after hours, or you come in, let's say you have a Saturday class, we aren't going to have a check-in station at that time. We do ask you to follow the daily health assessment, take your own temperature, but we won't have the same process where we'll be checking people in either after hours or on the weekends. So that's a little bit different, but like I said, we do have check-in stations available all the way up to 7.
Great. And perhaps a somewhat related question that's come in, is there a way to know for each building where the entrance and exit doors will be and how students should access that and how will they learn that?
Absolutely, and I actually answered this question, and I put a link there for the Auraria Higher Education Center website, because AHEC actually has that on their website, and we'll make sure and get that updated onto ours. It shows for every building on campus what we're going to designate as the entrance and the exit, as well as the ADA accessibility, accessible entrance and exit. So those are absolutely important, and so I did put the link there, and we'll make sure and get that widely distributed as well.
And actually, Chris, while I'm asking these questions to you, there's another one that kind of more comprehensively asks you to walk through what students, faculty, and staff need to do to actually return to campus. What steps do they need to take? I know we're communicating this on the website and elsewhere. If you could just walk through that, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. If I were to boil it down, and I will boil it down just to 2 things, we're going to ask you to wear a face covering, and we're going to ask you to do your daily health attestation. Those are the 2 things that we absolutely need to do to keep our community safe as possible. So those are the 2 that I want you to focus on. What that means is every day that you're coming to campus, you click on the daily health attestation that asks you a series of questions, talks about whether you've had any exposure, whether you're having any symptoms. And if you are, we want you to stay home. If you're sick, stay home. If you're symptomatic, stay home. Don't come here. That's what that's designed to identify. Now, once you complete that, it actually has a space there for your temperature as well. If you want to come to campus and get your temperature taken, we'll have that available at the check-in stations. We're also giving away oral thermometers to folks who don't have them at the check-in stations. So you can take one of those home and take care of yourself. As I mentioned, the other thing that we really want to focus on is bring your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask, and wear your mask. And that's going to be the theme for the fall. I will say that, are there a couple other things that we're going to want you to do and we're going to ask about? Absolutely. We're going to ask you to do the SkillSoft training. There's been a link out there. But are we going to condition your entry upon that? No. What we are going to condition your entry upon is if you don't have a mask and if you aren't wearing it. And if you haven't completed the daily health attestation. So focus on those things. We do have, and I did notice this in the questions, and Jennifer, you may want to jump in here too. There are lots of questions about the ID cards. I don't know, Jennifer, if you have any updates for that. There's some very specific questions that I know I don't know the answer to.
I don't, thank you, Chris. I don't have updates on the ID cards, but I'll check what the questions are, and we'll work with Auraria on the issues that we need to. It is important to have our ID cards, but we'll work through whatever issues we have to make sure that everybody can come to campus on Monday and start classes.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in just now is, are considerations in place for grading if a student becomes ill with COVID and it limits their ability to produce assignments, at least temporarily? I don't know if the provost would be the best person to weigh in that, or others, please jump in.
I'll take a stab at it. Maybe Elena can expand on it from the student success point of view. We've been as flexible as we can about this over the spring and the summer. We're asking people to be as flexible as we can going into the fall. Grading is obviously very course specific, so I would just encourage students to look at the syllabus for their particular course and talk with the faculty. Elena, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that or can add to that.
I would echo that the faculty are prepared and ready to work with students as needed as related to assignments being completed if there's positive cases for COVID-19. And I would also just advise that the Dean of Students office is also available to students if they need some support in that effort.
Great, thank you. Let's see, another excellent question, I think, for Elena. What role can student organizations play in helping students make connections this fall in, such a different environment?
That is a great question. I love that question. And our students have already been thinking and planning and getting involved virtually, and we're so grateful to that. One thing I would be remiss in not mentioning is that tonight at 7 o'clock is the Play Fair. So if you're a student and you haven't yet heard about Play Fair, I really encourage you to look into that. It is Play Fair Online is a high-spirited, high-energy event that allows new students to engage with each other. So we're looking and learning and finding new ways to engage with each other in this virtual environment that we have going on here. And we've seen all sorts of fantastic events, games, ways of meeting each other and connecting. And our student organizations are really, really critical in terms of helping us make connections across the campus. So our student life team is very excited and ready and able to help support student organizations to plan events. And we have a lot of experience from student success planning our own events, and we're ready to help and support this effort.
Thank you, Elena. So we're coming up about 5 minutes before the hour, and we did schedule this for 4 to 5, and we understand if people need to drop off, but we've got some more questions that we'll do our best to answer for a little bit longer. And if you want to stay with us, please do. And the next one I have is for Jennifer, also a sort of budget financial question. And the question is that we noted in a recent email that there'll be more information about the budget after we know enrollments and the census period for student enrollments. If our financial situation improves, is there a chance of rolling back the furloughs? On the negative side, if it gets worse, might we be looking at layoffs or other changes in the financial picture?
Sure, thanks, Paul. I know that the budget is on everybody's mind these days. And as we explained I guess it was back in May in our town hall about the budget, that we would relook at and really reassess in September what our budget looks like for the current year, which is typically not what we do, but just given how all of the uncertainty, we will be reassessing things in September. What we're waiting on, of course, is census. So fall census is on September 2nd, and it takes about a week or two for us to get all of the data analyzed to understand what our enrollment is. And we all know that enrollment is the lifeblood of our budget. And so depending on how the enrollment comes in for fall, and of course we'll do that again in the spring and in the summer, that will allow us to decide what to do with the budget. I will give you a quick update though on where we stand right now. It's not census yet, so this will change. Dr. Marks mentioned this in her opening remarks also, is that enrollment is coming in about where we were this time last year. And while that's really good news, it really is about the mix. And I appreciate that Dr. Marks opened with those comments too, because what we're experiencing this year is growth in our graduate students, which is fabulous, and something that really is a centerpiece of what we do at CU Denver. We do need to realize that our graduate students take fewer credit hours and are with us for less time, fewer years. Our undergraduate enrollment is coming in lower, and we are probably going to end up with our smallest first year and transfer class since 2013. So those lower numbers in enrollment will ripple through our budgets for the next at least 6 years. And so that's something that we need to take into consideration as we think through the impact right now and also in the future. Also, we're seeing a large decline in our non-resident enrollment, and that makes a lot of sense, given that a lot of our international students unfortunately can't be here in person, and we wish that they could be here with us, as well as our non-resident domestic students. And so that is having also a financial impact on our budget. And so what this kind of boils down to, and again, I'll have better numbers. We're going to actually have a budget town hall in September, so I'll have a lot better numbers to provide for you all then. But what this boils down to is more students that we need to teach and less revenue coming in. So when I think about what does that mean for our budget, what does that mean, Paul, for your question of are we in a situation to roll back furloughs, or will we have to make additional cuts? I don't think we'll be rolling back furloughs. I think the furloughs will probably be here for this academic year. Obviously, if enrollment comes in unexpectedly high, either by census or in the springtime, we'll revisit that. But I also don't see us in a situation where we'll have to do additional cutting at this point. So I think status quo is where I'm feeling right now. I'll obviously have a whole lot more when we get to September, when we can have a town hall that's more focused on budget and I have more concrete information that I can share.
Paul, can I jump in on some ID questions? Because there are a lot of concerns, questions about the ID. And like I said earlier, and I'm going to be a broken record, wear your damn mask and do your daily health attestation, and we should be good. We're not going to be turning away students at the door who haven't been able to get their ID card. That's not going to happen. Nor are we going to turn away faculty if they haven't been able to get their ID card come Monday. So I know that's a real concern, and I get it. We are working even in the midst of this town hall, actually, to get some more details for you. But at the end of the day, we are not going to turn people away who don't have their IDs. So please don't misunderstand that we do want people to wear IDs, because this is a new thing for us at Auraria. I mean, we're all going to be wearing these around our necks. That's not something we're used to doing. So this is going to take some time for everyone to get used to it. But it's not going to delay you from being able to get in the building and do what you need to do. Having said that, we are continuing to work on alternatives, ways to get things delivered, make sure we can do things safely and carefully, because we don't want a long line. That's not necessarily a good thing anywhere. So we'll continue to work on that and be in touch with more information as we have it. One other real quick thing I can answer the question to is, do we have food on campus? The answer is yes. The Tivoli does have food available. And I actually put a link, I think, in the answers button to the hours for the Tivoli food vendors, because they do have some modified hours here and there, but they will have food available. At the moment, we have not opened the cafe in the library and the food vendor in North Classroom, nor have we opened Woody Creek nor Qdoba at this time. There continue to be conversations about when and if it would be appropriate to open those. And it's unclear whether we're even have the density within the buildings to be able to support them opening and actually making money. So at this point, what I'd say is there's continual conversation about when we will trip over that. Jennifer, did you want to jump in?
I did, because I just have some kind of just-in-time information that I'm receiving during this town hall about our IDs. And so there is a process to upload your photo remotely, and there will be additional locations in the Tivoli Town Hall, as well as Tivoli and Commons to be able to get your IDs. So I think just as this is going, as we're having this conversation, there's work going on to create more ways for everybody to get their badges.
And Jay Campbell just said Qdoba is opening September 1st.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Another question we have that's a challenging one really is, I'll just read it. We know we're taking something of a calculated risk in limited opening of the campus. And while we're committed to doing everything safely to protect our community, there's certainly the possibility that there'll be some COVID-19 cases in the fall. How will CU Denver respond to this? What is our plan for that? And Chris, I don't know if you want to start or others want to weigh in too.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think that's a question that's on all of our minds, or a lot of our minds. And for those of us who have K-12 kids, myself included in that, you know, I pay attention on a daily basis to what my school district is going to do if they're going to decide something different, but also when they're going to make those decisions. So as far as going remote or doing something different. And what I would say is the question about how do we weigh things and how do we talk about them or how do we consider them? We have a lot of processes in place, including the daily attestation and wearing masks. We're going to expect people to follow those. And we believe, along with public health officials, that that can go a long way towards keeping our community safe. We're not going to be able to be like the NBA, who can create a bubble, right, and exclude anybody who may have been exposed. We aren't that community. We're a commuter campus. In those areas where we aren't commuter, Links Crossing, we're doing additional testing to try and identify that. At this point, and this continues to be this way at the Anschutz Medical Campus, we continue, there are cases occasionally, but what they are cases of people who catch COVID not on campus. That's been their experience, is they're not experiencing COVID being, the transmission isn't happening on campus. There are people who do get it from other activities, and I think we're all familiar with what those are, but we haven't seen that happening on campus. And our hope, my hope, is that we can continue to be successful in protecting ourselves, protecting each other, and doing right by each other. And I think that's going to be our goal. Obviously, and absolutely, when we see outbreaks on campus, which we very well may, we're going to have long and hard conversations. And Michelle introduced some of the metrics that we're going to be looking at. That includes how many outbreaks happen on campus and where they're happening and the context. So that information will be publicly available, and we'll be providing it so you can see it. But I think this is going to be different. This is a different experience for all of us. I mean, I've got my wristband. I've come to campus a couple of times. It is different. But I think we are in this together, and we're going to try and continue to support each other. And the best thing we can do is, I'll say it, wear a mask and social distance and complete the daily attestation. So thanks for the question. And we're doing our best, and we're trying to rely on public health, and they're doing their best as well.
There were several questions about where do I get more information. Elena, is it mostly the website or where else?
Yeah, I would definitely start with the Safe Return website, and it's very easy to access. You can go to our main campus website, www.ucdenver.edu, and at the very top, you'll see a click for our link for important information for return to campus. And there's all sorts of information in there, and that's where we're really updating all the real-time information as we receive it. There's information for faculty, staff, and students. I would really encourage everyone to look at the frequently asked questions, the FAQs. There's been a lot of time and effort that's gone into that. There's a link for safety protocols, a lot of great detailed information as related to our safety protocols. There's also recordings of previous sessions that have been held. in addition to other types of resources on that website. In addition, as I've mentioned before, Link Central. Link Central is your location where you can get your questions answered. And one of the positive disruptions for this really disruptive time that we're living in, this really challenging time that we're living in right now, is that we've really been able to lean into the concept of Link Central and what it's able to provide in terms of a place to get your questions answered or get them referred out to a subject matter expert that can help support you. So please go to the Safe Return website and please use your Link Central resources to get your questions answered.
Great, thank you. We're coming up on the real end. We thought we'd maybe end with a little lightning round from each panelist on what they're most excited about this fall. We've been talking about the challenges, the difficulties, the things we need to overcome, but what's exciting, and maybe then we'll end with Chancellor Marks mentioning that and also her final remarks. So Provost, would you like to start?
Well, I think I'm most excited about getting things up and running, and I think we're ready and looking forward to a great semester, even though it'll be totally different from anything we've ever experienced before. I think we've got some great things in place, and we'll do some wonderful things for everybody before the end of the semester. So just getting going again and seeing some people coming around campus, I think will be terrific for me.
Great, sounds good. Jennifer, what are you excited about?
Oh, this is a great question. Thanks, Paul. I am so excited to see the way that the Links community comes together to just make fall happen. We have worked so hard this summer. So many faculty, staff have worked so hard. Students are ready, charged up, and I just can't wait to just have Monday get here and just see how this community comes together to do all the things that Chris says we're supposed to do, to be safe, but also to have that community again, to be together again and feel that human interaction again. I look forward to that.
Excellent. Chris, how about you?
You know, I worked a station yesterday. I sat there for almost 3 hours at one of the check-in stations. And I will tell you, to a person, people were gracious, they were kind. They understood that maybe they had to wait a few seconds, that maybe we didn't all know all the answers. But I will say that I was so impressed by our new students, by our returning students, by our faculty, by our staff. And I think that's what I'm most excited about, is seeing how people are going to step up. And I think we're already seeing people step up in a lot of different ways. And I think it really is a different time for us. And I think this is an opportunity for us to shine. And I saw part of it yesterday, and I can't wait to see more of it next week.
Thanks, Chris. Elena?
I love all these answers and I agree with all of them. And I would add that I'm just really looking forward to spending so much time in the student activities and engaged with the student success. I got the opportunity to participate in the virtual summer research symposium on Friday. And it was such a thrill to hear about all these activities that these students have been doing, the things they learned through their research experience, and how it changed their lives. And this is what it's all about. That's our mission, and that's what we are here for. And that's what makes us so excited and gives us such passion. And so it looks different. We had this symposium all virtually rather than in person, but nonetheless, it was still as exciting as ever. And I'm just really looking forward to more of that as we move forward into the fall semester.
Great. Thanks so much, Elena. And as we close down, we now still have over 200 participants. If you asked a question and we didn't get to answer it, next week, CU Denver News e-newsletter will address those questions and make sure we get that information out to you. But I'm delighted to hand the baton to Chancellor Michelle Marks for some final comments. Thank you.
Well, first I'll say what I'm most excited about, which is getting to meet you all, and that might look a little different this fall. Some of it will be over Zoom, some of it will be in person with masks and socially distant, but I already have been enjoying meeting our students and our faculty and our staff and our community, and I hope to meet each one of you this fall. I'm appreciative of your time this afternoon. This wraps up our town hall today. I want to thank our panelists and our moderator, Paul, and I'd like to wish everyone, students, faculty, and staff, a good fall semester. It's certainly going to be unlike any other. but it doesn't mean that it can't still be rewarding. After all, we are incredibly lucky to be educators, and so special being part of an institution that is supporting student success and learning. So thank you all for your commitment to CU Denver, for your compassion, for your contributions to our mission and our future. And if you see me on campus tomorrow or next week during move-in or check-in, please say a masked and socially distant hello. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. So stay strong, Links community.